and congratulations to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for bringing this massive decriminalization exercise, which is the largest in independent India's history. In one legislation, the government is decriminalizing 1,000 plus minor offenses. Perhaps this is a model for rest of the world to follow. Speaker, sir, I would also want to thank and congratulate the minister in charge for this exercise, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, who led this effort along with his team by literally burning the midnight oil and identifying across 78 different legislations minor offenses which were procedural errors, which were regulatory incongruencies, which were a hindrance to doing business in India, which had contributed to India's regulatory cholesterol. I would want to congratulate his team for the marvelous exercise that they have done by bringing in the Jan Vishwas bill, which is not just a story in numbers, but is most importantly an indication of the philosophical shift that the government has taken from avishwas to vishwas, from suspicion to trust, from regulator to facilitator. And this is the foundation of building a Viksit Bharat. Speaker, sir, the Prime Minister and our leadership gave me the opportunity to be the chairman of the select committee that went into details of the Jan Vishwas bill. And we had the good fortune of assisting the Parliament in framing this law in a more comprehensive manner. When I was given this responsibility, I met the Honorable Prime Minister and I took his guidance. And when I requested him as to what his specific input would be on how the committee should approach this work, the Prime Minister said only one sentence, and I want to recall that with a lot of gratitude. He said, Bharat ab sirf chalega nahi, Bharat daudega. And all those provisions, all those obsolete, archaic legislations which have caged India's entrepreneurial spirit, usko dhoond ke nikalna hai, expand the scope of the committee, identify as many provisions as possible, and in one go, we must decriminalize as many minor offenses as possible so that the ease of doing business and ease of living for our citizens is enhanced. मुझे आज ये कहते हुए अत्यंत गर्व है, अध्यक्ष जी, कि कमिटी के सभी सदस्य, I was just hearing to the speaker from the Congress saying that they opposed this bill tooth and nail, but there were many members of the Congress party in the select committee. Every single provision, every single recommendation of the select committee has been done in a unanimous manner. Every single person, irrespective of the political complexion, has supported the recommendations we have made. Adhyaksh ji, the original bill had 17 acts covering 10 ministries with a total of 355 provisions. As per the Prime Minister's guidance to enhance the comprehensive nature of this bill, to help the common man, the common citizen in ease of living, we enhanced the scope of the exercise. And today, the government has brought a total of 689 provisions across 78 legislations, resulting in the removal of 1,000 plus criminal offenses. This is the largest decriminalized exercise in the independent India's history. Adhyaksh ji, I want to very briefly mention what are the provisions that we have handled here. The speaker from the Congress party mentioned that this is going to enhance corruption, this is an administrative surrender, and so on and so forth. But the philosophy behind introducing these minor offenses, making even procedural errors into criminal prosecution-worthy crimes, had literally crippled the country's entrepreneurial spirit. And this philosophy had left nobody मैं आपको एक उदाहरण देना चाहता हूं अध्यक्ष जी। एक एक्ट था कैटल ट्रेसपास एक्ट 1871, 155 इयर्स ओल्ड एक्ट था ये, ब्रिटिश के जमाने का एक्ट। एंड व्हाट डज दिस डिक्रिमिनलाइज? अगर किसी एक किसान के गाय उनके जानबूझ के नहीं देखते हुए, विदाउट हिज नॉलेज, वो अगर किसी दूसरे व्यक्ति के प्रॉपर्टी पे चले जाते, देन ही वाज सब्जेक्टेड टू इम्प्रिजनमेंट। ये इस प्रकार के एंटी फार्मर लेजिस्लेशन 155 ईयर्स से भारत के स्टैट्यूट बुक्स में था। और आज प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में किसान को मदद करने के लिए इसको हमने डीक्रिमिनलाइज कर रहे हैं, उनको ताकत दे रहे हैं। ये छोटे छोटे ऑफेंसेस थे, ऐसा नहीं था कि वो जानबूझ के किसी को कर रहे थे, या इसमें कुछ दुरुद्देश था या क्रिमिनल इंटेंट था, बट दे हैड ब्रॉट दिस काइंड ऑफ प्रोविजंस। अध्यक्ष जी, असम में, वेस्ट बंगाल में लाखों करोड़ों संख्या में चाय बागान में काम करने वाले लोग हैं। अगर चाय बागान के कर्मचारी लेडजर में, अकाउंटिंग में कुछ गलती की, 10 डालने के जगह में उन्होंने 11 डाल दिए, तो उनको 3 महीने का सजा था। ये छोटे छोटे गलतियां, प्रोसीजरल एरर्स, क्लरिकल एरर्स, इसके लिए जेल भेजने का प्रावधान था, उसको हम खत्म कर रहे हैं। अध्यक्ष जी, आज आंध्र प्रदेश हो, केरला हो, बड़े संख्या में वहां कॉयर की इंडस्ट्री है और वहां प्रॉन के सेलिंग का भी एक बड़ा इंडस्ट्री है, फिशिंग का। बट अंडर द एम्पीडा एक्ट एंड अंडर द कॉयर इंडस्ट्री एक्ट, frivolous procedural errors were attracting 6 months, 1 year, 2 years of imprisonment. This was always keeping our small farmers, fishermen, under the fear of prosecution. इसको हम change कर रहे हैं, and we are giving them empowerment and strength. And patent tax में अगर कोई टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट है, इनोवेशन कर रहा है, in the process of filing his patent, if there is any procedural error, he would be facing criminal prosecution. So ये जो कांग्रेस की, ब्रिटिश की मानसिकता थी 70 साल की, ये किसी को नहीं छोड़े थे। छोटे किसान से लेकर छोटे दुकानदार तक, छोटे उद्यमी से लेकर बड़े व्यापारी तक, और लैब में काम कर रहे टेक्नोलॉजी इनोवेटर तक, सबको क्रिमिनल प्रोसिक्यूशन के डर लगाकर सबको अंदर भेजने का एक प्रोसिक्यूशन का डर, ये इस प्रकार के फिलॉसफी पैदा कर दिए थे। टुडे all these minor offenses are being decriminalized, and an era of faith-based, trust-based, empowerment-based, facilitation-based mechanism is being brought in because of the Jan Vishwas bill. Adhyaksh ji, along with this, 2 important dimensions of ease of living is also introduced. NDMC में, न्यू दिल्ली म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन में, पिछले 30 साल से यहां के लोगों का डिमांड था, दिल्ली में 2 प्रकार के प्रॉपर्टी टैक्सेशन होता था। यूनिट बेस्ड टैक्सेशन सिस्टम ओल्ड दिल्ली में चालू था, बट न्यू दिल्ली म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन के इलाके जो थे, वहां दूसरी प्रकार की टैक्सेशन होते थे। And this was a very anomalous situation where one city had 2 different property taxation systems. मैं विशेष रूप में गृह मंत्री अमित शाह जी को मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूं, धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं। 30 साल के जो मांग दिल्ली के, न्यू दिल्ली निवासियों के जो मांग थे, इट इज फाइनली बीन अप्रूव्ड, एंड वन सिटी वन टैक्स का यूनिट एरिया टैक्सेशन आज लागू हो चुका है। इसमें मोटर व्हीकल्स कायदे का भी कुछ इंप्रूवमेंट्स हमने किए हैं। अध्यक्ष जी, यू आर अवेयर दैट इफ देयर इज एन एक्सीडेंट एंड समबडी लूजेस अ लिम्ब और लाइफ, सरकार की ओर से कभी कभार एक्स ग्रेशिया पेमेंट देते हैं, कॉम्पनसेशन देते हैं। अभी तक कानून में यह प्रावधान था कि अगर किसी व्यक्ति को, ये परिवार को, सरकार की ओर से एक्स ग्रेशिया पेमेंट अगर मिलेगा, तो प्राइवेट कंपनी जो उनको इंश्योरेंस क्लेम देगा, उससे वो डिडक्ट हो जाएगा। दिस इज नाउ रिमूव्ड, एंड we have amended in such a manner that along with the ex gratia payment that they will receive from government, a full settlement from the insurance company will be provided to those who suffer from an accident. ये आम आदमी के जीवन के आसानी करने का तरीका है। अध्यक्ष जी, छोटे छोटे इस प्रावधानों में बहुत बड़े दिक्कतें होते थे। फॉर एग्जाम्पल ईज ऑफ लिविंग के जब हम बात करते हैं, अगर किसी व्यक्ति अपने ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस को ठीक समय पे रिन्यूअल नहीं किए तो उनको इमीडिएटली पकड़ते थे, ये होता था, फाइन होता था। हमने इस प्रावधान के अंदर 1 साल के उनको एक एडिशनल प्रोविजन दे रहे, फॉर 1 एंटायर ईयर before the expiry of his term he can apply for driving license and get it done, and upon expiry for 1 month 30 full days he will have a grace period where the driving license will be valid and he can use it. ऐसे छोटे छोटे प्रावधान, there are hundreds of such provisions अध्यक्ष जी, that is going to enhance the ease of living of the people. But अध्यक्ष जी, जब मैं इस सब बात कर रहा हूं, मैं एक डिस्कशन को थोड़ा ब्रॉड करते हुए, थोड़ा विस्तार करते हुए, मैं एक स्पेसिफिक आरोप जो अपने कांग्रेस के साथी जो आरोप हमने अपने ऊपर लगाए कि ये बिल करप्शन को बढ़ाएगा, ये बिल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सरेंडर है, इसको मैं ठीक से जवाब देना चाहता हूं अध्यक्ष जी। अध्यक्ष जी, जब हम सेलेक्ट कमेटी में बैठ के 80 से अधिक कानूनों के स्टडी हम कर रहे थे, कमेटी के सभी सदस्यों को यह लगा कि इस देश अगर आज भी पर कैपिटा इनकम में पीछे है, आज भी हम इतने बड़े गरीब पॉपुलेशन को हम देश में हैं, तो इसके पीछे इसी प्रकार के सब चीजों को क्रिमिनलाइज करने का, भारत के एंटरप्रेन्योरियल ताकत को एक प्रकार से शैकल करने की जो सोच थी, वही सबसे बड़ा कारण है। दिस वाज द रियलाइजेशन एंड लर्निंग, एंड आई वांट टू एलैबोरेट ऑन दिस अध्यक्ष जी। देयर आर 26,134 provisions, 36,134 provisions under which a person doing business in India can be jailed. छोटे छोटे प्रोविजंस, अगर आप ठीक से फॉर्म फाइलिंग नहीं किए, यू कैन बी जेल्ड। आपके दुकान के व्हाइट वॉशिंग ठीक से नहीं किए, यू कैन बी जेल्ड। फैक्ट्रीज में ठीक प्रकार के स्पिटून नहीं लगाए, यू कैन बी जेल्ड। जहां जहां आप फाइन के इस्तेमाल कर सकते थे, वार्निंग का इस्तेमाल कर सकते थे, यू स्टार्टेड creating a paranoia, fear of imprisonment among the people who were doing business in India. And this literally crippled the country's economy and the country's entrepreneurial spirit. Adhyaksh ji, how did this 26,000 provisions, more than 69,000 compliances for business, how did this come about? ये ऐसा नहीं है कि एक ही दिन में ये शुरू हो गया. It is not that one day one government made this. This was a colonial legacy. We inherited the system from the British, and this cage that the Congress party inherited in 1950s from the British, they tightened it further, and what was a maze was converted into a complex labyrinth of complex regulations. I'll give you an example, Adhyaksh. In 1987, 1950s, after the First World War, first War of Indian Independence, after the East India Company came into picture, they introduced multiple legislations that were designed to keep Indian businesses small, to keep Indian businesses dependent and always afraid of prosecution. The purpose, Adhyaksh, I'll conclude in 10 minutes, I have been given 30 minutes time. That was the purpose of the colonial economic policy, to make India a market for British goods and to not empower or strengthen India to manufacture its own goods. This was the design of the economic policy. We got freed politically in 1947. The natural expectation was that pursuant to political freedom, we will also have economic freedom. But the Congress party, and especially the first Prime Minister Nehru, chose a socialist, Nehruvian socialist policy that crippled the industry further and tightened the control of the state over the country's economy. The cage the British had built, the Congress made it larger and it locked it more tightly. Not that this was not opposed. In 1959, Chakravarti Rajgopalachari, who was called the conscience keeper of Mahatma Gandhi, he opposed this command control nature of the Indian economy. and he launched the Swatantra Party only to promote free market enterprise. His advice was not heeded to. So for almost 70 years, which started with Pandit Nehru, which was carried forward by Indira Gandhi, the socialist license quota permit Raj became stronger and stronger in such a manner that it became overarching, it became the mainstay of how the country's economy was run. And this created two very important hindrances and cultural changes in the Indian economy, Adhyaksha. The first one was that it created an economy of scarcity, and it also made corruption the mainstream. Because if you criminalize even procedural errors, and if you put in place a system where license has to be taken for everything, to start a factory, to expand capacity, to import, to export, and also, despite all of this, if you succeed, if you were given a 97% tax, then you are opening the doors for creating a black economy. You are incentivizing people to break the law. You are incentivizing people to become corrupt. So this was the system that in the last 40, 50 years we saw successively being done. That is how 26,000 plus provisions came about, which had the power of prosecution, launching criminal prosecution for even minor offenses. Now, Adhyakji, you will be surprised to know that at the peak of the license quota permit Raj, there were 29 central labor legislations, 100 state level legislations. A factory had to maintain 6 separate attendance registries, 10 different accounts for overtime wages, 5 types of records to maintain annual returns. Even law regulated the height of urinals in workers' washrooms, and if it was any different from what was prescribed, the factory owner could be jailed for 6 months. These were the kind of draconian provisions that was there. So there was a culture where if you wanted to produce, you had to get a license. If you wanted to grow, you had to take permission. And if you succeeded, if you earned something, the government would come and take 97% of the earning by imposing the highest penalty and income tax. This was the mainstay of how the country was run. And these are not numbers and statistics. There are stories, there are anecdotes that top Indian business leaders have now commented that are in public domain. I want to quote only 2 of them, which is so ridiculous today looking back at how the country was governed. We all today speak highly of Infosys and Narayan Murthy ji. Today, Infosys has a market capitalization of 5 lakh crore rupees. It is employing more than 3.5 lakh people. When Infosys was started and Narayan Murthy ji had to import 1 computer, he had to make a trip to Delhi 40 to 50 times for importing 1 computer. He records this pain, and because he could not afford flight tickets then, he would take train journeys, 40, 50 train journeys across 2 days, 3 days just to import 1 computer. This was how enterprise was shackled. There is another anecdote, Adhyaksha, of K.V. Ramani, one of the co-founders of NASSCOM. The RBI had given him permission to travel on a business trip, 2 nights in Frankfurt and 1 night in Paris. His meeting in Paris got rescheduled and he arrived there a night early. He concluded his business, came back to India. The first thing that he encountered was a notice from RBI asking him, why did you spend 2 nights in Paris, 1 night in Amsterdam when we had given you permission for the opposite? This is how our entrepreneurs were attacked. This is how they were curtailed. This is how entrepreneurial ability innate to Indian spirit was curtailed, shackled, but also corruption was increased. And this facilitated, this created, Adhyaksha, a culture where Indian businesses could not expand, could not become globally successful models, and this had a direct result on how much employment India could generate and how much wealth India could generate. I want to give an example on I want to take the attention of the House to what this command control economy, this license quota permit Raj of the Nehruvian and the Indira Gandhi years cost India and common Indians in terms of economic growth. Adhyaksha, ये 1960 में इंडिया का पर कैपिटा इनकम,
Please conclude.
अध्यक्ष जी, आई बीन गिवन टाइम, आई विल टेक अनदर 10 minutes. अध्यक्ष जी, इंडिया's per capita income in 1960 was $82. South Korea's was $94. Near about the same. China's per capita income in 1960 was around $89. India's was 82. We were almost equal in 1960. I want to compare the story of what happened the next 30 years. Today, South Korea's per capita income is $33,000, 13 times more than India's. China's per capita income is $12,500, 5 times more of India's. If we compare it with Singapore, with Malaysia, they are 38 times, 16 times more. While we kept on languishing, while India became poorer and poorer, these countries galloped forth, marched forth, and became some of the richest countries, miracle economies. And it was possible because the entrepreneurs of that country were respected, wealth creators were respected, and they were not kept under shackles. When J.R.D. Tata met Pandit Nehru, J.R.D. Tata records that when he communicated to the Prime Minister that Indian entrepreneurs and industries were not making profit, the Prime Minister then told him, "Don't bring the word profit before me. Profit is a dirty word." If our wealth creators are not respected, if industrialists are being subjected to this kind of a prosecution and imprisonment threat, how will the country go forward? Adhyakji, there has been no change in the Congress party's mindset from calling profit a dirty word during Nehruji's time to today Rahul Gandhi attacking the industrialists and the wealth creators of this country. There has been no change that has happened. Yes. Adhyakji, I want to bring to your attention, Adhyakji, how the work that we have done in the last 10 years by dismantling all of these things, how India is galloping forward. मैं आता हूं साहब, मैं आता हूं वहां 12 साल में हमने क्या किया मैं बताता हूं आपको. पर उससे पहले अध्यक्ष जी, I want to put it on record what Congress party's Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who partly tried to dismantle in 1991 the command control economy, what he himself had to say about the kind of license, quota, permit, inspector Raj that the Congress party's successive governments had created. I want to quote the former Prime Minister. Manmohan Singh ji said that these controls were introduced in the name of introducing greater rationality into the allocation process. But after a period of time, they became instruments of corruption. They became instruments of delay. They became instruments of uncertainty, and the economy simply could not get a clear sense of direction. If you have a rigidly controlled economy cut off from the rest of the world by infinite protection, nobody has any incentive to increase productivity and to bring in new ideas. Therefore, the license, permit, quota Raj became a great handicap in carrying forward the sustained process of growth. This is not a BJP leader speaking. This is not somebody from the opposition benches when you were ruling speaking. It was your Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who gave the harshest indictment of 70 years of your economic policy planning. Adhyakji, this became the main reason why हर कुछ लेवल पे छोटे-छोटे चीज के लिए, छोटे-छोटे काम के लिए, छोटा परमिशन लेने के लिए, लाइसेंस लेने के लिए इतना बड़ा करप्शन देश में शुरू होने का कारण यही कल्चर था. अध्यक्ष जी, आपने पूछ रहे थे पिछले 10 साल में हमने क्या किया. पिछले 10 साल में साहब सुनिए, पिछले 10 साल में नरेंद्र मोदी जी सत्ता में आने के बाद, नरेंद्र मोदी जी को जनता ने मौका देने के बाद हमने ये फिलोसॉफिकल बदलाव शुरू की. सबसे पहले मोदी जी ने रेड फोर्स से शुरू होकर उन्होंने कहा wealth creators will be respected in this country, industrialists and wealth creators will be equal partners of the country's growth. वहां से फिलॉसफी शुरू हुआ और फिलॉसफी वाज फॉलोड बाय पॉलिसी एक्शन। मैं बताना चाहता हूं क्या हुआ। अध्यक्ष जी, in the last 10 years, Adhyaksh ji, we have brought multiple reforms in the country's economy. GST was introduced, IBC was brought in. We began the Make in India and the PLI schemes, which have resulted in the creation of millions of jobs. We have removed more than 6,000 provisions that were obsolete and archaic, which had absolutely no role in today's day and age. We also introduced the 4 labor codes, which have greatly rationalized Factories Act, Labor Acts, all of these got modernized. From 2014, 47,000 compliances have been rationalized. 3,700 legal provisions have been decriminalized. More than 1,500 obsolete laws, which have absolutely no bearing in today's age, has been repealed. And as a result of this, India's ease of doing business has jumped from 142nd in 2014 to 63rd today, and I want to congratulate our Prime Minister and Piyush ji for this phenomenal and momentous task that they have done. From 142 to 63, and we have a long way to go, and this decriminalization exercise is a part of this. 17 different taxes, 13 different cesses were merged into one GST, one nation, one taxation. 51 corporate offenses were decriminalized. Closing a company earlier would take 499 days. Now, under the CPACE initiative, it takes about 70 days. The Insolvency Bankruptcy Code has reduced resolution from 4 to 6 years earlier to around 300 days today. Adhyaksh ji, these are the massive changes that we have brought, which is why today India is the 4th largest economy in the world. ऐसा नहीं है कि रातों रात मैजिक वैंड ऐसे चला के इंडिया की इकोनॉमी 4th largest बन गई. It is sheer hard work of the Prime Minister and this government that this has resulted. Adhyaksh ji, I want to conclude by highlighting one very important aspect of why this is most essential and why at this point in time this massive reform is going to have catalyzing effect on the economy for the next 20 years. Today, Adhyaksh ji, 1.2 crore new workers enter India's workforce every year. By 2030, 1 in every 5 working age people on earth will be Indian. This is the largest demographic opportunity India has. The only way this can be converted into prosperity is if large number of jobs are created. And it cannot be created if our entrepreneurs are shackled, if their entrepreneurial spirit is always threatened with a threat of prosecution. Adhyaksh ji, when Indian entrepreneurs are left free, they flourish. The biggest example of this is the story of the Startup India movement. In 2016, DPIIT had around 500 registered startups. Today, there are over 2 lakh registered startups in India, over 120 unicorns, and more than 22 lakh direct jobs have been created. This is just one example that if you allow Indian entrepreneurs, Indian youth to progress, they will build for India and then they will build for the world.
Now, please try to conclude.
Adhyaksh ji, I want to conclude by taking the attention of the House and the country to 4 main leaders in the world who contributed greatly to giving an economic fillip, a new trajectory for their respective countries' economic history. FDR is even today, FD Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt is still remembered gratefully by Americans for the structural reforms he created in the country. Ronald Reagan is respected with gratitude because of how he created new institutions in America that has stood ground even today. Margaret Thatcher is respected in Britain because she navigated the country in the most difficult of economic times. Deng Xiaoping is remembered gratefully by Chinese today because he opened up their economy and modernized it. Lee Kuan Yew is remembered gratefully by the Singaporeans because he modernized the old port town. Adhyakji, Narendra Modi will be remembered in the coming days as somebody who did for India what FDR, what Ronald Reagan, what Lee Kuan Yew, what Margaret Thatcher together did for their country. This is the foundation of a Viksit Bharat. I want to thank the Prime Minister and I want to thank this government.